Okay, great. We're continuing Tanya Chapter 12. We ended off our discussion. We're somewhere in the middle of chapter 12. We ended off the discussion on prayer and the effect that prayer has throughout a person's day. Okay, you can listen to the previous share on that. And that during prayer, I don't know if we mentioned this last time, during prayer, thoughts, distracting thoughts, it's called machshavas zaros, which literally means foreign thoughts. Foreign thoughts does not mean necessarily a inherently bad thought, but it's foreign to the prayer service. Thinking about the parnasa, thinking about food, sounds, well, how bad is it? It's not bad. And there's a time and a place for it in the day. But it is foreign to the prayer service. So that's machshavas zaros in prayer. And the Alter Rebbe says we need to push that foreign thought away with both our hands. In other words, we cannot, well, obviously you can, but one should strive to completely push away the foreign thought. Excuse me. We should strive to completely push away the foreign thought with both your hands, with all our energy, putting it out of our realm completely and getting back to the topic at hand. Okay. So, and this even applies to a Bainani, because a Bainani, even though he's got holy thought, speech, and action at all times, I don't know if we've discussed this and made it clear, nevertheless, the Bainani, bad thoughts enter the Bainani's mind. Versus the tzaddik, that doesn't happen. For a complete tzaddik, for an incomplete tzaddik to a different degree. Please excuse my yawning. It's still the morning. But sorry, to clarify, the Bainani, even though he's holding good thought, speech, and action all day, every day, and he really focuses on his davening, it's not that the Bainani doesn't have a bad thought or a foreign thought entering his mind. It does. A bad thought or a foreign thought does enter the Bainani's mind. But immediately as it enters his mind, he does not entertain it for one split second longer than it's necessary to say I'm pushing it away with two hands. That's the concept. That's the concept. The practical guidance given by the Alter Rebbe, saying to us, because the Bainani could think that they could either misunderstand or could think I'm putting in so much effort, but these bad thoughts keep coming into my mind. Like, what's happening? And the Alter Rebbe is saying it's not your fault. That's the important idea. It's not your fault, but your avoider, the service is to push that foreign thought away. That's the service. And even taking it away from the realm of avoidance Hashem, in other words, about serving Hashem, and putting it in a realm of a person living a more refined life, a more spiritually elevated life, which I think is important, and it's important from the side of, this is my opinion and understanding, from the side of living a holistic lifestyle. And it definitely links up with avoidance Hashem without a doubt. But it's this concept of feeling light. And the light is the opposite of heaviness. Holiness is light. And a person should not be perturbed by these negative thoughts. But on the contrary, should just push them away with two hands and be with simcha that they have the opportunity to do that avoider. And then makes that person feel good. Because if God forbid a person ponders these thoughts, they're very heavy thoughts usually. Obviously it depends, thinking about food in davening, I wouldn't say it's a heavy thought. Versus negative thoughts, obviously that's heavy thoughts and really pulls a person down. But the general concept, I'm sure it makes sense right now. Okay, and then the Alter Rebbe continues. He says, speaking about one's neighbor, so not 100% certain what he means, but what I can say, my understanding is that one's neighbor, it doesn't literally necessarily mean one's neighbor as in they're living next to you on the same street. But one's neighbor is the person you come into contact with. They might not be your best friend. They might be your best friend actually. But I think it's not even talking about that. Just people you come into contact with among your daily schedule. What is common, unfortunately, for the animal soul is for there to be animosity thoughts about one's neighbors. In other words, when you see a random person and you have a good, random, quick conversation with them, it's done. But when you see a person more frequently, then this idea of having an animus thoughts, if that's the right word, negative thoughts, becomes frequent and becomes apparent. So here too, we will not let those thoughts enter our mind a split second beyond the first split second that it enters our mind, and then we push it away immediately. And then we must go do the exact opposite. We must display loving kindness. And to repay offenders with favor. Do you know how amazing this is? Do you know how life-changing this is? Not just for you, but for the other person. You know, when somebody's an offender, they know they're an offender, even if it's subconscious. They're not expecting the victim, in this case, let's say me or you, the person listening to this show, they're not expecting the victim to behave nicely to them. But what happens when they do behave nicely? It throws them. It makes them humbled. It makes them feel sorry for their past actions. It just like turns them upside down. It's unbelievable. This is the godly path. I'm not saying it's easy. So you'll ask, why must I do it? Why should I do it? Because I know right now that most people's animal souls, I could be mistaken with most, but I think at least a quarter to a half of people's animal souls, but I'm really leaning more towards most, like 75, 80%, if not more. Most people's animal souls, if someone acts not nice to me, I don't want to act, even if I don't act not nice to them, I don't want to repay them with favors. Why am I repaying them with favors? And on the contrary, completely different example, if someone pays favors to me, I'll pay favors to them. It's human nature. So yes, I go back on my word. Most people won't repay the offenders with favor. But it's a very godly thing to do. We see that from Yosef HaTzadik, from the Torah. Oh, this is the end of the chapter. Which is that with Yosef HaTzadik, who repaid his brothers with favor. If you look at the Psukim, read the Chumash, it's unbelievable. He played a little bit of tricks on his brothers, and one needs to look much more beneath the surface what that's about. I'm not certain myself, but whenever there's a difficulty in Tanakh, you have to look beneath the surface. You can't take the difficulty for face value. Obviously also everything in Tanakh, but even more so the difficulties. But what we do see is Yosef repaid his brothers with favors. And he has such a love towards his brothers. And he said, God did it to me. His brothers literally threw him into a pit where according to halacha, they killed him. Because it says I could be mistaken, I'm not an expert on this topic, but I think it's scorpions. I could be mistaken, either spiders or scorpions or both, or just scorpions. I think it's just scorpions. Can be corrected on this point. But the point is, scorpions, the poisonous ones, if you throw someone into a pit with these poisonous scorpions, it's considered first degree murder. In other words, it's considered that you actively murdered them. Why? You didn't murder them, you threw them into the pit. But the percentage chance of these poisonous scorpions stinging this person is 100%. 99.99999%. So if you throw somebody into a pit, that 99.99999%, they're going to get poisoned to death. That's considered first degree murder. His brothers did that to him. Then miraculously he was saved. Obviously he was unbelievably holy. He was holier than his brothers. That's what we learn now. That's why the brothers didn't understand where he was coming from. Because Yosef was on such a spiritually lofty level, head and shoulders above the brothers, which by the way, the father Yaakov recognized that. But the brothers, from their spiritual holiness, said, how is he acting like he is? It doesn't make sense. How is he acting like he is? It can't be that he is being holy. But he was being holy because he was on such a high spiritual level. The proof's in the pudding, where he literally made the Egyptians the most spiritually immoral people circumcise themselves. That mean he made the most spiritually sexual immoral people in the entire world at the time, spiritually and sexually more refined. Like an unbelievable, ground-shattering task, something which is unheard of in history to a certain degree. Joseph did that because he was unbelievably holy, and his brothers do not see that. But the point I'm trying to make is, that's why he was saved from the snakes and the scorpions, right? But the point I'm trying to make is, his brothers threw him into the pit, then took him out the pit and sold him. And then years later he says, God did that to me. You know what the truth is? He's right. God did do that to him. There is a parenthesis about free will over Yid. I'm not going into that now. But nevertheless, he said at the end of the day, God rules the world, and I'm just going to just love you guys, and I'm just going to give you guys all your food for free. And he could have made them suffer, and yes, he played tricks with them, but like I said, that's really a separate point. But he said explicitly to them, God did this to me, not you. And I think that's the point, is to realize, first and foremost, everything comes from God. Who the messenger is irrelevant. We have a mitzvah to love everyone, particularly our brothers, our fellow Eden. We have this mitzvah. So even if someone's offending me, what's the word? Yeah. Even if someone's an offender, which offending me in different ways, however it may manifest, I have a mitzvah to love them. I have a mitzvah to give them favors. So no, not a contradiction. My animal soul, doesn't want to, right? But my godly soul, what's the difference? They are fellow Yid, whatever it may be. And even if they're not Yid, they're fellow mankind. We can put our egos aside for a moment and not return a favor, but give a favor, just for the sake of giving a favor. And this is a really, really, really important concept. Not just this exact particular idea of an offender does something to you and then you repay them with favor. But this concept in life spiritually, it's hard to think of examples. It could be with God. Someone might, God forbid, think that God's an offender to them. Unfortunately, it's more common than not. How do you deal with it? How do you deal with it? Your animal soul is upset. Your godly soul isn't upset. Your godly soul might be perturbed, but it's not like upset. It's a different story. It's a bit of a deeper discussion. But I'm trying to bring out a point here. I'm trying to make this point really go home. That it's our animal soul that holds grudges. It's our animal soul that doesn't want to return favors to offenders. It's our animal soul that only wants to give to somebody that we believe deserves to receive that money. Why must I give my money to anyone random? Or even if it is somebody random, I don't think they deserve for my money. It needs to be people that deserve my money, etc., etc. That's an animal soul thing. The godly way is not that. And this is in the chapter of the Benoni, teaching us a fundamental lesson. A few fundamental lessons. One, the tzaddik has already passed this. The tzaddik is, to a certain degree or another, is succeeding in this area. That's number one. Number two, for the Benoni himself, this is an exceptionally difficult area. Something very difficult to achieve. Even for the Benoni, that's what I believe. And number three, practical advice. Because we are humans, we have emotions. What happens if a person is not, so to say, a Benoni, but they really are trying? Which is actually really what it's about. Even though the book's called the Benoni, the fact that he's trying means he's winning. So this person's really trying, and there's a particular individual in his life, whoever it may be, that has perturbed him, that has upset him, or whatever it may be. And this person can't bear to communicate with the offender. What's the practical guidance? And this literally just popped to my mind now, the connection with the fact that this is in chapter 12, but the concept that I've been aware of before is that as much as there's a way to, repay offenders with favors, and that's a very godly way of doing it. And like I said, the Tzaddiq's already doing it, and the Benoni, it's a challenge and a struggle as it is. Benoni, who, by the way, we haven't really discussed, has his emotions much more in control. It's part of being a Benoni. What about your average Jew, the metaphorical average Jew, or in the literal average Jew that's not yet there? How do they succeed in this area? They don't have the energy, they don't have the kishkas, whatever it may be. And we're not, God forbid, judging them. We're empathizing with them. They don't have the energy to return the favors to the offenders. So what can they do? Firstly, potentially dodging the offenders, and not like running away or whatever, but like sometimes, you can love them from a distance. That's part of it. Don't have bad thoughts about them. That's a really good start. And there's other things. You can give tzedakah on behalf of them. They don't even necessarily need to know about it, but you are repaying offenders with favors. 2 pieces of practical advice. 1, just to repeat, is not to have bad thoughts about them, and 2, like doing a favor from afar, like giving tzedakah on their behalf, but like they don't even have to know about it, etc. Or maybe you do let them know about it. But the point I'm trying to make is that no matter where a person is on the spectrum, one can take practical guidance in repaying offenders with favors. I've spent a lot of minutes discussing this, and I think this is a huge practical discussion point in our generation. Not to say that it wasn't in previous generations, just focusing on our generation. And it links up, and I'm going to end on this, it links up with the whole idea of bringing Mashiach, is that the reason why the temple was destroyed, Rahman al-Aslan, is a lack of Avas Yisrael. It's baseless hatred. It sounds ridiculous, and in a way, excuse my language, retarded. But we literally, the Jewish people, I don't even want to start the conversation. Baseless hatred it's retarded. There's no logic involved. It's so ridiculous. It just makes me so upset. So I am upset about it because there's a time and a space to be upset about the destruction of the temple, and it's very upsetting. And when it's Tisha B'Av, I get very upset. Reading about the Jews did this and the Jews did that, I really don't like it. But nevertheless, the way forward is baseless love. Just a quick story in my life is that there's a Yom Yom that says, when you befriend the Yid, Hashem befriends you. I'll tell you a story. I knew a Jew, somebody I met once or twice before. I knew his brother more than him. And I drove 3 or 4 guys to a funeral once. And he came in the car, and obviously we knew each other, etc., but not much more than that. And we went to go buy a bit of food just before we got there. And I said to him, it wasn't a lot of money, whatever. I said, please, can I buy this for you? And he looked at me, didn't know what to say. I was like, no, whatever, let me buy this for you. He's like, okay, sure, thank you so much. And from there, it led to such a beautiful friendship. And he actually helped me with a huge project in university, a huge, literally final year project he helped me complete, which was allowed. It was just physically assisting me with the experiment. But the point I'm trying to make is that this baseless love comes back to you, and it's the most amazing, powerful technique. I recommend you to try it. I should do it more, to be honest. Just baseless love, just do something. Even if you don't have the financial means, it doesn't have to be emotional means. Give somebody a call. Give us extra smile to somebody. Make a joke to somebody who looks a bit down. This is baseless love for no reason at all, and that is is basically the number one way of bringing Mashiach. That coupled with obviously Yidden increasing in Torah and mitzvahs, but this Avos Yisrael is absolutely fundamental, as we see all over Torah. Okay, that's it. Go have a good Shabbos.